What's happening, folks? Back with another reaction, back with some more acid-techno. And we're back with a track from one of the most devastating duos of the past dozen years or so. We're talking Chris Liberator, the one and only, as well as his partner in crime on many, many releases, Sterling Moss. A producer who goes back to the early 2000s in his own right. I mean, people will know Chris Liberator, you know, one of the godfathers of the UK or like London acid scene specifically, an old school punk rocker. I've gotten to know him in recent years, a really cool guy, very intelligent, educated guy as well. Just a pleasure to talk to, as awesome a person as he is a DJ and producer. So once again, shout out to Chris. But again, he and Sterling for many years have made excellent tunes together, often like hard driving acid techno with like slamming percussion. That really does come across, that a lot of their tunes just have like kick drums and other percussive elements of such power and intensity. Yeah, and also crazy punk rock style acid riffs. And indeed, one of their biggest tunes, most famous certainly, is Punk Attitude on Size Squadron, a Polish label. And that one, it's basically exactly what it says. It's a acid techno punk rock tune, which again, Chris has a background in punk rock. I was going to punk shows for a couple years before I discovered acid techno, and one of the things that drew me to acid techno was a recognition that sort of the ethos and the DIY nature of, and also just the place within the larger musical world that acid techno is in, meaning like it felt like acid techno was the punk rock of the electronic music world. So for all those reasons, I began following Chris's music back in the day, have been a fan since probably late 96 is when I first heard acid techno. By early 97 I was starting to like buy CD releases. 98 I got my turntable, so at least 25 years, maybe 26 years. Bottom line, yeah, this is one of their most famous tracks. By they, I mean Stay Up Forever. Like, you know, Chris and a couple other people started that label, Aaron and Julian. But yeah, bottom line, one of the biggest hits on Stay Up Forever, and that sold like really, really well, like beyond, you know, a normal like techno record, is One Night in Hackney by Dynamo City. Dynamo City being Chris Liberator and Henry Cullen as Dave the drummer, or like kind of the old school version of Dave the drummer. But yeah, it's Henry Cullen and Chris Liberator. And yeah, that tune was sort of like a play on, or, you know, perhaps piss take in relation to, but the horror is One Night in New York City. So yeah, basically it's a tale told. It's literally a narrative about a very big night, shall we say, in Hackney, which, you know, Hackney is sort of ground zero for the London acid scene. That's where, you know, Stay Up Forever and I think one or two other really famous labels were sort of based for a long time. I think recently, last couple years, I think Stay Up Forever moved their offices. I'm not quite sure if they're in Hackney, like specifically anymore. I do think they're still in like the same general area in London, but bottom line, we're going to listen to the Chris Liberator and Sterling Moss mix. The original Dynamo City One Night in Hackney, I think it was like '04, maybe even '02. I think '04 was like the first round of remixes. Yeah, I think maybe the original was like '02, so about 20 years ago now, obviously like about, you know, almost 10 years after the label got started. But yeah, then a couple years later there was a remix vinyl that came out, two different versions. I'm gonna, you know, be maybe a little heretical or blasphemous here. The original, I like it. It's not one of my favorite tunes. I think it's cool. I got nothing against it. It's certainly not a track I dislike. But, you know, I just think there are way more interesting tracks on Stay Up Forever, even from that same sort of early 2000s time period. So it is what it is. But yeah, bottom line, the original never really made the impression on me that it did for other people. First round of remixes, cool, but again, nothing that really stuck out. Then this one came out, I want to say it's 2014. This is Stay Up Forever Remix 41. I'll look it up in a second. It doesn't really say it on the record. But when I heard the Chris Liberator and Sterling Moss mix, I said, okay, now this track, I need to pay more attention to it, because this particular sonic configuration just set my brain and the original track, to my mind, on fire. So yeah, this is my favorite version of the track. No disrespect to the original or any of the other remixes. A lot of people like the Pet Duo remix on this. I think it's sort of like a harder techno sound. But yeah, bottom line, as the train goes by outside, again, I live near the train tracks, draw your own conclusions. But yeah, for me, the Chris Liberator and Sterling Moss mix made this track overall what like everyone else had already thought of it, if that makes sense. So with no further ado, let's get it. This is Dynamo City, One Night in Hackney, the Chris Liberator and Sterling Moss mix, with a special guest appearance by A Train. Menacing, like dark warehouse vibes already, which is very intentional. But see, one of the main differences is that constant, like, kind of, you know, like punk rock acid riff. It's not in the original. The original is just kind of more like heavy and pounding. But with this acid guitar riff, it's like acid bass guitar riff. Energetic tune, it makes it more of a punk rock tune. Also that like dissonant drone sort of thing. So story of someone who visited London the first time. Alright? Dissonant, again, sort of like industrial drone synth, very key element. It's the like staccato, like rapid nature of the acid.
name
dear, this is my favorite. Ripping away like multi-layered, that cymbal crashing in, drum synth, that little kind of like choppy, like metallic synth, like plastic. Again, that acid bass punk guitar, it makes the tune with that industrial sound. Little like electric buzz layer. That'll do you. I think most people couldn't handle 5 cans of Stella. Regardless, yeah, I mean, it's an amazing tune. I love the sort of like, you know, tall tale nature of it. It feels like, you know, right as they're articulating sort of the culmination, the crescendo of the story, the sort of like, the nature of it gets a little silly, which, you know, is reflected in the way they respond to it. I love it. Bottom line, it's an epic tune. Again, to me, more interesting than the original, and not by a small margin either. Like, I just think the original is cool. It's, you know, I know people especially key in on the back half, because the back like third or so has this like crazy hard wicked acid riff. It's really like nasty and aggressive and intense. But to me, this is, again, it's more like a sort of acid techno gutter punk tune. So yeah, once again, shout out to Chris and Sterling, massive remix. And, you know, big ups to the original. Like, the idea that acid techno and the sort of like hard London style would actually have, like, you know, a hit like that genuinely sold, I think, many copies, you know, much more than you know, several other releases in the catalog combined. So yeah, the fact that that would happen is very impressive, if, you know, a bit unlikely. So yeah, shout out to the original and Dynamo City. Do let me know what you think of the remix. Other than that, I will see you next time.